Allan Kaufman is a friend, and Allan Kaufman is an active Tuesday Club member. Allan is someone you know because this is Allan's 6th Tuesday Club talk. So he's experienced in doing this because we pay so well. You remember his swimming with the sharks as a volunteer diver with the Shed Aquarium. We actually saw him do that. And his talk on distracted driving. Safety is a big concern of Allan. He helped us understand environmental issues, risks that we're facing our Great Lakes. And today's kind of an extension of that. And he talked about Flight 93 on September 12th, one day after the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. Allan's most recent talk was on helping seniors stay safe in their homes. I mean, he and Patrick share similar passions in wanting to help us and to help people in general. Today's talk is also about our health and safety in a different but very important way. A little background about Allan. Allan is a Vietnam combat veteran. After his service, he was Director of Environmental Health and Safety and Fleet Safety for Quest Diagnostics. Concern about us and making a positive difference in our world has been Allan's passion. We thank him for that. Please welcome back our friend and Tuesday Club member, Allan Kaufman.
Well, good morning, everyone, and I want to thank Ron and Bob and the North Shore Senior Center and the Tuesday Club for allowing me to do this presentation for you. One thing, if you cannot hear me, please raise your hand at any time. It won't be for a question, just so I know you're not hearing me well. And there's a couple videos, so during the pre-part of the video, it'll take me a second or two to get it up and running. So be aware of that. So what we're going to talk about today is our oceans. As you can see, they're going through a crisis. Some people don't believe it, but take my word for it, it's a crisis. This is just a little of my background, and I'm not going to read it all. You can see it. I am a member of the Climate Reality Project, Vice President Gore's organization, and we are very concerned with what's happening in our world today. As you can see here, yesterday, maybe 10 years ago, this is what our ocean reefs look like. Healthy, lots of fish, lots of marine life swimming around. And then you look at the other side under today, and this is what's happening in our oceans right now. This is bleaching of coral, and we'll talk about it as we go along. These are some of the main topics we're going to cover today. I'm not going to read the whole slide, so just kind of read it along. We're going to talk about the warming of the oceans. We're going to talk about the rising of the sea levels. Ocean acidification. As the oceans become more acid, it affects us in a lot of ways, and you don't even think about it. And extreme weather events. Extreme weather events, does anybody bring to mind living here in Chicago? The ocean ecosystem and the oceans cover about 70% of the world that we live on and get very little respect. We live on land. We think about what's happening on land. We do not think about what's happening in the other 70% of the world that we seldom venture into. We're seeing higher temperatures, which are affecting the fish and the coral. And coral is the largest ecosystem in the world. The polar ice cap is melting. Actually, you'll get to see some of that. Rising sea levels represent a slow, seeming unstoppable threat to us. The oceans are warming, which affects current, and climate change is affecting the chemistry of our seawater, which has an effect on our fresh water. As you can see here in this picture, 2% of the planet's fresh water is on our planet today. Only 2%. And I know you all want to drink water periodically. Think about what would happen if you didn't have that 2%. The currents are getting warmer. This was taken a couple years ago by NOAA, the National Organization. And what you're seeing here, if you look on the United States side, which is in the far upper left, it says California and there's a black line arrow coming down. Well, actually today, that arrow has now turned slightly red. So on both sides of the United States, and I'm not going to go through the whole world, both sides of the United States, we have red currents, which means the oceans are warming. They're expecting a dramatic El Nino this year in our oceans, which will really affect our weather. So as you see, the oceans are warming. Chicago weather. Let's talk about something you're really familiar with, right? You all live in the city or the area. Think about the past few months, what the weather's been like. What have you experienced? Up and down, absolutely. We've experienced mild and wetter winters. Didn't have to shovel or snow blow or near as much, but when we did, it was a pretty big storm, but most of them were very little. Increased rain and flooding. Yesterday, the Des Plaines River crested at 14 plus feet. Yesterday. Increased heavy rains and flooding. And we're seeing that all over. This afternoon, later this afternoon, we may get another little storm coming through. More erratic and intense storms. Think about the storms you've just seen over the last 2 weeks. Hail, tornadoes, wind. You've all experienced it, and some pretty heavy rain. So the reasons for that, warm Pacific waters. As the oceans warm, it causes more of our weather to be affected. As the weather moves from the West Coast, which is now starting to get warmer in the currents, all the way to the East Coast, it's affecting us. Really affecting us. And right now, as of today, Illinois is the leading nation in severe storms in 2026, and no other state is even close. Just the last week, we had 14 tornadoes in Illinois. 14 tornadoes that touched down. Luckily, there wasn't a significant amount of damage or injury or death. But there's no state even close to us. And it's continuing. We're not over it yet. Why does a lot of this happen? I want you to concentrate on the red line that says greenhouse gases and then the tan line above on the picture. What happens is the oceans absorb a lot of heat. A lot of heat. As it comes in from the sun, it comes down and the oceans absorb it. And we're lucky about that, to have that 70% of our world with water so that the oceans absorb that heat. The problem is we are creating greenhouse gases. more and more. If you drive an electric car, that's wonderful. If you drive a gas car, you're contributing to things like this. And I won't go into a whole, this is not a political talk. This is really more to inform you on what is really happening. You get a thin layer of greenhouse gases. And what happens is that prevents the heat coming off of the ocean to go back up into our atmosphere. So the heat comes back down to the earth and in the water, and it produces higher and more severe amounts of bad weather, as we know. Okay. So I want you to watch this video. This is about how the oceans should look.
Off the east coast of Australia, up to 200 kilometres offshore, a line of surf rises out of the open ocean. Beneath the surface, creating these breaking waves, is the most magical marine environment on Earth. It's one of the 7 recognised wonders of the natural world. The Great Barrier Reef. Stretching for over 2,000 kilometres up the tropical coast of Australia, it is quite simply the largest living structure on the planet. It's made up of almost 3,000 different reefs, each one with a different personality. And it's so much more than just coral. But the Great Barrier Reef is most famous for its underwater world. Here, there is more life than almost anywhere else on Earth. Many of the creatures are exquisitely beautiful. But some seem straight out of science fiction. While others can kill in an instant. And just when you think you know the reef, it changes. Every second, every hour, every day, and every year. It's a world of continual surprises. This is the amazing story of an ever-changing natural miracle, the Great Barrier Reef.
Okay. And so now you saw what a healthy reef looks like. The largest structure ecosystem in the world, Great Barrier Reef. I was very fortunate. My last dive that I ever did so far was on the Great Barrier Reef. And it was really interesting because I was kind of in the middle between what you saw and what you're going to see now. So you saw the good part, and you have also seen the bad part. That bleaching coral, after a few months, if the water doesn't change its temperature, because it can only survive in a very small rise of temperature, what happens is it dies. And then this ecosystem, which supplies a lot of life for a lot of creatures underwater and above the water, this ecosystem tends to die. And it's not being replaced. There's no way to replace it. Fortunately, there are some organizations that, like the Shed, where I used to work, they are now growing coral that is less resistant to temperature change. But it will take a very long time to grow the coral and then take it out into the ocean and plant it. So it is really affecting a lot of marine life. And this is what you get to see when you dive at the Great Barrier Reef now. You get to see a lot of this. So the ocean warming, it has a lot of different effects. We have coastal erosion, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little later, but I'm sure you've all seen pictures maybe of houses in different water environments where they've dropped into the ocean. We've had extreme weather events. Well, here in Chicago, we're having extreme weather events. These are tornadoes that are from different weather events, fire, snow, and water tornadoes. Threats to protected species, excuse me. The North American right whale is right here, and the beluga whales, which you can see at Shed or a lot of places. Their feeding habitat is being destroyed. So they're either moving or they're unfortunately dying. Sea turtles, again, their feeding habitat is being destroyed. And sea lions. And fisheries. If you eat seafood, you probably are aware of the price increases that you are starting to see dramatic in, and it's not just because of what's going on with tariffs. A lot of it has to do with what's going on in the oceans. As the supply becomes less and less, the prices are going up and up. And when you look at this, I want you to look at the picture first. This is the top part of this picture where it says marine heat waves and marine life. The top part of the picture is from California. They have a huge kelp forest in California off the coast. And unfortunately, the part on the right is what's happening now. The kelp forests is home to many, many different marine life creatures. Well, when you look at the right, they're not there anymore. Coral bleaching down below. You see that purple coral. I don't know if any of you are divers or have been down under the water, but when you shine lights on coral, there's dramatic colors. People don't realize, because from up above, it just looks kind of dark, but there's dramatic colors underneath. And the deeper you go, the more vibrant the colors become. Well, unfortunately, like you saw earlier, this is what's happening on the part on the right, is the corals are dying. And I put this slide up because there are some winners and there's some losers. There's some winners like rockfish and tuna. Tuna are for some reason are accepting the warm waters and they're staying around. And you know, we eat a lot of tuna as a country and as a world. And orcas have increased their birth rate for some reason. But the losers, how many people eat salmon? Few. Prices going up, salmon's becoming scarce. Also, Dungeness crab, mussels, market squid, they're all losers. And it's primarily because their habitat is being destroyed. And so they have to move somewhere else, and it's not always successful. Okay. MHW, and that's marine heat wave. This is what is happening to our oceans now. It's pretty much covers a lot of what you see, the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, Atlantic Ocean. You can see the areas that are heating up. As it becomes more yellow, it gets warmer. This map done by NOAA was 96% accurate in 2024. And they have increased the new map even more dramatically so that you see a lot more warming that's coming down. Our oceans are warming up. Please believe me. And it's not a good thing. Sorry. So when our oceans warm up, what happens? The ice melts. If you've ever been up towards Alaska or some of the others and you've seen glaciers and so forth, some of them aren't there anymore. So I want you to just watch a few seconds of this. That's a dead whale.
Be big.
So I think you get the idea what's happening here. The video's too long to play. The ice cap is melting. It's creating higher sea levels, warmer oceans. And as we lose that, we have no way of really replacing it right now. Again, we lose a lot of coastal erosion. Both sides of the United States, both East and West Coast, have had major dramatic coastal erosions. Some of the highway, like Highway 1, if you've ever driven on Highway 1, part of it has fallen into the ocean actually. And now they've repaired it, but they're having coastal erosion. It's a beautiful drive, by the way. I also want to talk about the acidification because this is really important. Because as the ocean gets more, an excess of CO2 from the atmosphere, it is converted into carbonic acid and it makes the ocean water more acidic. And this is a real hard classification of acid for the animals who live there to try and survive. What you're seeing is a lot of marine life is dying because the ocean is becoming more acid. It's also affecting some of us on the land, especially near the ocean. I just read a report that in the vineyards in North California, which are near the Pacific Ocean, their grapes are becoming more acidic. So think what that does to the wine you drink. It becomes a little more bitter. And they're trying to figure out a way to grow their grapes without the roots reaching the water or where the water comes into the land and having a lot of acidification. And marine life like this, beautiful marine life, are dying off because they can't take the increase in the acidification. Extreme weather events. We are seeing a lot of extreme weather events. Like we looked back a few slides ago. What are we having here in Chicago? Extreme weather events. Produce more intense hurricanes. And that affects a lot of different areas of the world. We don't get hurricanes, we get more tornadoes. But if you live in an area where the hurricanes are more, they get more hurricanes, they're increased in their intensity. So Atlantic hurricanes, let's take a look at Atlantic hurricanes. In 2025, last year, we had 3 Category 5 hurricanes in 2025. Anybody want to guess how many we normally get in a year? Close. We generally 1, and we've had 3. We average generally about 3 hurricanes a year, and most of them are in the Category 3. Seldom do we get a Category 5. They've had 3 last year. So if you have any friends, relatives that live on the East Coast, guess what? Maybe you go down there for the winter. A lot more intense hurricanes are coming your way because that's just the nature of our ocean warming up. The impact of the warming is freshwater, as we talked a little bit about before, decreasing in amount. As the seas warm up, what's happening is we're seeing a conversion of seawater and freshwater together. And we've had that before, but as it becomes more dramatic, it's becoming a greater amount of freshwater and seawater mixing, and therefore what's ending up happening is we're losing our fresh water. And how many desalination plants do we think we have here in Chicago? 0. And I can talk about Lake Michigan too, because there's other issues going on with Lake Michigan where we get our water. We're seeing currents that are increasing in their strength. Fisheries have less species available. Shipping takes longer, nothing to do with political. But just shipping takes longer because there's more intense storms. Tourists don't want to go as much to areas that are having problems with weather and currents. And if you cruise, there have been cruises that have to change their itinerary or sometimes even cancel the cruise because of the severity of the storms. We're seeing more coastal property being damaged. And some of those people now can't even get insurance anymore because they know it's going to happen. The insurance companies know it's going to happen. And other businesses that are affected by extreme weather. Farming, what happens to the crops when tornadoes and things like that hit, lumber, groceries, and more. The ocean warming has a dramatic effect on all of us. All of us. So here's our Great Lakes. I'm not going to talk about all the stuff that's written on here. You can read it. What I am going to talk about is Lake Superior. For years, Lake Superior has been the coldest, deepest, and clearest lake of the Great Lakes. The clearest, really. What's happening now as our waters warm and our temperatures change is Lake Superior about 2 years ago started seeing algae blooms for the first time ever. And as algae blooms, it's toxic to humans, but Lake Superior, being as cold as it was, never had that problem. Guess what? It's warming up. It's having that problem. Here's an interesting fact. Lake Michigan doesn't have as much algae bloom as Lake Superior because we have zebra mussels which eat the algae and help clean the lake. The unfortunate part is the zebra mussels get into everything and cause massive damage, especially at our water filtration systems. But that's a whole nother story. See if that works. 20% of the world's fresh water comes from the Great Lakes. 20%. Think about if you don't have the Great Lakes to provide you with fresh water. You're going to be drinking bottled water, and how much do you think it's going to cost you? A lot. So here we see some of the currents. The currents really affect the ocean's warming, and also the ocean's currents affect all the other things, the shipping and all the other things that go on. And this is warming up. As you can see, there's warm flow, and those produce El Niños, which really affect our weather dramatically. It makes our weather wetter and more significant when you have El Niños. Fisheries. Once there was an abundance of fish in our ocean. The largest ecosystem in the world, the ocean. What's happening now? And this is from the North Atlantic Sea Forum, which is a group that oversees fisheries and so forth. And they're predicting, a dramatic decrease in the amount of fish available in the next 3 to 5 years. Shipping. Again, not political. This is when these storms hit, when it becomes violent, these ships have to go a different route, and it takes them a lot longer to go somewhere. And they move at such slow speed anyways. Think about how much longer it's going to take you to get your oil, your food, or some parts that you need for your car. A lot longer. And as we talked about, the impact on tourism, we're seeing beach erosion. So where there used to be 30 feet of beach going out to the ocean, in many places now there's 10 feet. And people aren't as excited to go down to where the oceans are anymore, because there's a lot more probability that things happen. And of course, the picture on the right, you see the cruise ship storms. And if you've been on a cruise ship when it had a storm and you've been in rough waters, it is not fun. I don't want to make anybody seasick, but I've been on a ship where even the crew got seasick. So we're looking at the impact on farming, lumber, floods. What happens when your cornfield gets flooded? Just last week, a lot of areas, and it's happening now along the Fox Lake and the Des Plaines River. The areas are flooding. And guess what happens to the crop that's just been planted? So the grocery stores are not getting their fresh vegetables like they used to. Property costs are going up. There's no insurance, all because of floods, extreme weather, erosion. This is what some of the West Coast really looks like now. So what can we do? We can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. That's one of the big things. Reduce our single-use plastic. If you drink out of a container, can you reuse it to drink again? Some of the soft drink companies are saying they're trying to recycle their plastic bottles. About 4% of that gets really recycled. The rest doesn't. This is what's in the ocean right now. There are 4 of these the size of Texas in our oceans right now. And this is all plastic, all plastic. And the problem is no country wants to pay the money to clear it out, and because they can't do anything with it. Plastic, if you throw a plastic bottle in in your waste, it'll take about 1,000 years in some dump before it really starts to break down and do something. 1,000 years. So when we all get older and we're looking at that plastic 1,000 years from now, but that's what happens. We have 4 of these in the oceans right now. These create heat. It keeps the heat in. Transition to renewable sources of energy, which we are doing slowly but surely. Improving energy efficiency. Sustainable practice. So I hope I've given you some indication that our oceans are warming. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, but we as a nation, we as a world, humans need to do something to change this.
Let's give Allan a big hand.
You indicated that Illinois had these extreme weather. What is it about the state of Illinois, or is it a location or?
It's a good question. As the currents come from up above, from the Rocky Mountains, and then from the Gulf, they kind of meet right in this area in the Midwest. And that creates a lot of different weather patterns. So we're seeing right now, we didn't see this last year as much, not near as much, but right now we are seeing a dramatic change. Well, think about it. How often do you listen to the weather? Every day? And do you hear changes every day? It's going to be 30 yesterday and 70 today. It's going to be rainy tomorrow and windy. So the currents that are coming from the oceans are going different ways, and it just seems like Illinois right now is in the middle, and we're catching it.
Do you know anything about plug-in solar panels?
I know that they are available.
You just plug them into a regular socket?
Right, a 110 socket, and they're supposed to help provide more energy so that you can use less in your home. They're mainly for home use. Some people can plug them in on their patios if you have a patio. I'm not an expert in them by any means, but I just know a little bit about that. They are available, and some people are starting to use them, but you don't have to mount them on your roofs anymore.
I think all of you are voters, and it doesn't matter what political party you are, but the Reclamation Water Department, which is an elected position, was one time with Deborah Shore, who is a strong advocate, and she, in one of her lectures with Northwestern panel, said the Midwest will become, because of the erosion, the water source for most, because our Great Lakes, like, as you stated. So she is now with the EPA, and I think that if you can direct your conversations to people like her, or even the Water Reclamation Department, because I think that when it becomes bipartisan, well, I think it's not a political party issue, it's all
Right.
of our issues. So that's one thing I'm gonna say, and I forgot what I was gonna say too, so.
Okay, there is just so you know, there's an organization called the Alliance for the Great Lakes. And they are stationed here, their headquarters is here in downtown Chicago. And I was an ambassador for the Alliance, but they are promoting basically fresh water and cleaning up our Great Lakes because, excuse me, there's a lot of things that are happening in the Great Lakes that we don't always know about, like invasion carp and mussels. And in addition to that, if you're not aware, Chicago, the city of Chicago, right across the street from Navy Pier and up at 69th Street, has the two largest water reclamation filtration plants in the world. They are right here in Chicago. And they send out water to many suburbs in addition to the city. But there, when I say that 20% of the fresh water comes from the Great Lakes, a lot of it's coming right here from Chicago.
Over the years, there have been many groups and individuals, and some of them spoken here, that have denied the warming of the planet. Have they begun to change their minds as a result of your kind of presentations?
My presentation is very basic. I'm not trying to diminish anybody or anything. But Vice President Gore's presentation is a lot more about the climate change. And if you ever get a chance to hear him or one of our presidents of the Climate Reality Project speak somewhere, they get into a lot greater detail. Whether it changes people's mind or not, I don't know. I'm not here personally to change anybody's mind. If you believe climate reality or climate change is not a big issue, I mean, that's okay. I'm only here to present facts that are real. And if you accept them, I'm happy about that.
I remembered. So I appreciate you emphasizing it's not a political issue, because it became one when whoever the president is in office. So I think it's dutiful for all of us, for our grandkids and grandchildren, that it is ongoing. It is a real issue. And so bad mouthing a certain party for believing that it doesn't do anyone any good. So the other thing I forgot to say or wanted to remind people is that right in our backyard is the Northwestern Nanotechnology Department, and they have many research things and successful research of producing water in the deserts and with nanoparticles. And I think if we all, no matter what your political party is if you can back up some of this research that's being done as well to validate what's going on in current solar energy that's being done all over the world, the panels and whatever else, they are also a good resource to connect up with, because they deal with environment as well as medicine and other areas. Okay.
Thank you. Has anybody driven down I-65 towards Rensselaer and Lafayette and those? Had anybody done that? What do you see when you go down I-65 as you get to Lafayette?
Windmills.
Oh, garbage on the road. No, I'm talking about something else.
Data centers. Data centers.
You see the big
Windmills.
turbines, the windmill turbines. And and if you come by at night, they're all lit up because they're trying to warn airplanes not to come too low. but thousands of them are on the farmlands to the right and left of I-65. And they are producing energy now. And that's another way to get reusable energy without hurting the environment.
Ernie, I have a couple. You've done a presentation before on the lakes, and today yours is on the ocean. A couple of things that related to it. You mentioned there are risks. In any way, are they directly related? In other words, what happens in the oceans touches the lakes, or is it the effects that are happening to both are just kind of tracking? I'm trying to understand if there's any difference, if they're tied. I know it's not a good thing.
Well, in the Great Lakes, don't forget, we have the St. Lawrence Seaway. So the water goes out to the ocean. As the oceans become more acidic, that acidity becomes into the Great Lakes. And there are other factors that create acid, the CO2 and things like that. So what's happening in our Great Lakes is not only are we seeing the acidity come up a little bit so that the pH becomes more acid, but we're also seeing that they're not as clean as they used to be. And that creates more problems for drinking those waters. I mean, Lake Erie, if you know anything about it, for many years it was on fire because it was so dirty. And there were so many runoffs from industry into the lake. We see that in Lake Michigan now a little bit. We're just about 6 months ago, I think it was, there was a spill down by the Gary area, and they dumped a whole bunch of stuff into Lake Michigan. I don't know what it was, but it was not good. Like I said, the zebra mussels help clean some of the water, but not enough of it. They're not going to change the acidity of the water. They're going to change the cleanliness so that the water appears cleaner. And most people have said to me they think that Lake Michigan looks cleaner than it ever has been. And but the ocean's effect does have an effect on the fresh water in the world.
And now an observation that relates to the recent astronauts going further than anyone has ever gone before. When they had their recap session a week ago, Saturday, the woman astronaut started to choke up when she was pointing to this beautiful orb floating in space surrounded by nothingness and saying, you know, I don't see any dotted lines. The implication was we're a crew, meaning that we're on this earth together, and it's fragile. And what comes to mind is finally this trip planning for going to Mars. I'm real interested in that kind of science, and they have found areas that clearly look like millions of years ago there were lakes and oceans. And what happened to that? Well, could that be happening to us?
I don't know. Honestly, I can't give you.
That was a rhetorical question.
I know, but I also don't know. All I can tell you is whether you believe things about climate or not, think about your grandchildren, not even your children, your grandchildren and their children. And how is this going to affect them in 100 years or so, 200 years down the road? If we don't do something about it, there's going to be some dramatic change unless somebody comes up with some dramatic technology, which may happen, which, now we have desalination plants, but even those don't work great. They work and they do produce clean water from the ocean, from salt water. But think about your grandchildren and how is this going to affect them? That's the only answer I can give you. Yes.
Alan, thank you for your talk, first of all.
Thank you.
You mentioned Lake Erie, so I wanted to continue that thought. It has gotten a lot better.
Mhm.
Was that done just by turning off the bad stuff they're putting in, and nature has a remarkable way of healing itself? Is that going to work? But that takes a long time, doesn't it?
Yes, Lake Erie, the Alliance had a lot to do with the chemicals and things being dumped into Lake Erie. At the time, they were able to get the courts to fine some of those companies pretty heavily. The EPA got involved. And so there was a lot of, unfortunately, good guy, bad guy going on. But Lake Erie did get better, has gotten better. I don't know if it's water I would actually go in and drink right now, but it's just amazing. I've been fortunate to go into the water reclamation plant across from Navy Pier. And in there, they have one of the world's largest microbiology labs. And I've been in that lab. I got to see the people work and the things that they are trying to do to help us keep our water clean for drinking is really amazing. And people don't know about a lot of this because they don't allow visitors. It's not a place you can go and visit. But it's really an amazing place to walk through and see also how they drain the water once it comes in, once they get the mussels off the drain from, they're a mile or two out in the ocean. They have pumping stations that pump the water in, and then they go through natural and electronic filtration. And then if they have to add chemicals, they do. But it's really an amazing thing. Lake Erie hasn't gotten that far yet. So.
Over here. At the beginning of your presentation, you said something that was rather sobering. You were talking about Illinois having the most severe number,
Right now.
the largest number of severe storms
Right.
in the whole country.
In the whole country.
I lived in Texas for over 30 years before coming back up here, and I used to say, this is Tornado Alley down here. What do we have statistically to compare? For example, and I don't know how many of you have this conversation, someone will say to me, you believe this weather? Jesus, it's 31 day and it's 75 the next day. I said, hey, it's Chicago, it's March. And it seems like it's been that way all my life. So what is the difference, if it's identifiable, between us having, I kid around, but I think it's probably serious. I won't see it, that someday Omaha is going to be the west coast of this country.
We hope not. But,
Laugh about it, but it could happen, not in our time. But seriously, what statistically do we know that gives us that comparison to the weather shifts here?
The weather services have just been reporting on like crazy, the meteorologists. And basically, the meteorologists have been reporting like crazy on the currents that are coming from, we're catching them from both sides, as I said before. We're catching the Gulf currents coming across the southwest, so they come up into Illinois. And sometimes when I say Illinois, we're in Chicago, right at the top, and there's a whole state below us. And then they meet the currents coming across like the Rocky Mountains or coming down through Canada. So they become violent because the two currents can't, whichever one's stronger may produce the more violent weather that we're seeing. But the fact that Illinois right now is the leading state in the United States for severe weather, and that doesn't mean tornadoes only. It means rain, hail, high winds. So it can be a lot of different things. And when you were in Texas, I went to school in Oklahoma, and we used to go up on top of, we had this new dorm, it was 21 stories. Us really smart guys, we would go up on top of this dorm in the roof and watch the tornadoes come in. In Oklahoma, they have tornadoes. And we would stand there and, oh, look, we'd see 2 or 3 tornadoes and we'd be standing there. We were college kids. What do we know? Not to run, to watch. And it was really something. So.
Yeah, thank you for a very enlightening talk. This question is a little bit off key from what you're talking about. One of the knocks on the wind farms is that negatively affects the birds that they, they fly into them and so forth. And that kind of makes strange bedfellows of the anti-climate change people, and the birders have a common interest. Can you comment a little bit about the danger of wind farms to the bird population?
Honestly, I can't. I know that Illinois, I used to volunteer at the Botanic Gardens. And if you go into the visitor center at the Botanic Gardens, there is a book where people write their bird sightings. And Illinois has become a very large migration stop for many birds. People don't know how many birds that actually come through the state. And one of the things that's so interesting is I haven't heard a lot about the population interacting with the fans that go around on these windmills, but I'm sure that some of them probably fly into it. I mean.
All right, folks, we need to wrap this up. If you have questions for Allan, please feel free to come up afterwards. Allan, thank you.
Thank you.
Can't wait for your next one.